Today is Monday, August 11th, 2025. This is First Alert Weather Plus. Meteorologist Nicholas Snider here, giving you a look on everything you need to know weather-wise, including a preview of what's going on in the tropics. So let's get right into it. Three things we're talking about here. We're increasing that humidity, unfortunately. I know we were loving the drier weather, but it's just not going to last for too much longer here. We're also talking about rain headed our way toward the middle of the week, and Tony is going to give us a look at what we can expect, at least a little bit later on in this tropical weather season. In the long-term forecast, we always do that here on First Alert Weather Plus, giving you that first alert to what you need to know in terms of what could be headed your way in the long term. So let's talk about what's going on right now. High pressure is centered over this confluence of air right here, just off the east coast right here. And what this is doing, you notice the little arrows kind of moving clockwise along that high pressure right there. This is bringing in southeasterly winds into our area. When winds kind of slope over the mountains to our southeast and kind of come down the mountains, what we see is drier conditions. And that's why we've had those fairly dry humidity days. Not a whole lot of humidity has been in our atmosphere. However, this high pressure is going to move away. We're going to talk about that. There's also a low pressure off to the north and west that we are going to talk about. But, of course, more on what we can expect with the humidity is first going to be talked about here. Current temperatures are hot. We're into the lower and middle 90s all around the area. For those of us in Huntington, 92 degrees, 88 in Charleston. Again, this is at 7 o'clock on Monday, so you know this is really hot. 92 in Gallipolis, 86 Portsmouth. We're at 90 in Athens, 90 Paintsville, 85 in Logan. Those dew points are not really too high. We're in the 60s. It is more humid further off to the west, out towards Cincinnati, for instance, with a dew point of 70, 69 dew point in Lexington. But further to the east, where that downsloping is taking effect, look at that, a 64-degree dew point in Huntington. 66-degree dew point in Charleston, 67-degree dew point Summersville, 69 Sutton, 66 in Beckley. So you factoring in that humidity, it's not really feeling all that much warmer out there. It's only in the mid-90s for those feels-like temperatures. No dangerous heat to talk about whatsoever, at least in the short term. And that is really helping us. Meteorologist Hannah Hayes talks about what happens when you deal with not a whole lot of humidity and why we're seeing this effect of the wind sloping up over the mountains and drying as they come down.
Hey everyone, meteorologist Dylan Goday here with a look at your Tuesday zone.
Downsloping is something that occurs when air is forced to go down a mountain. The air then warms as it dries as it descends, and this usually happens with stronger winds that can lead to some pretty significant temperature increases. So when the moist, warm air hits the mountain, it's forced upwards to stick with the terrain. As the air rises, naturally it cools, which causes moisture to condense into rainfall. As the air that's now cooler passes over the mountain, it falls back down, and after the air dries, it warms up as it flows down the mountain, creating a
My apologies for that. Let's go back to Hannah.
temperature spike on the leeward side of the mountain that can sometimes be a pretty dramatic temperature change. Sometimes in the colder winter months, this significant rise in temperature that downsloping causes can lead to a pretty rapid snowmelt, which will cause a runoff as the snowmelt falls down the mountain, and the snowmelt can overflow streams and rivers, causing river flooding or even some flash floods as well. Now, these winds can also have an effect on your health, believe it or not. These winds can pick up on allergens such as dust and pollen, which will naturally increase their concentration in the air. In Europe, there's actually a condition known as fern sickness that associates with downslope winds. Downslope winds can happen at any different elevation. It's not always at the tallest mountains in the world, and though they're most common out west and in the Rockies, we still see this phenomenon here in our region too.
And yeah, so we're seeing the winds coming down the mountains. All that air is just condensing out of the mountains, and that's why we're seeing so much drier air. The moisture that's coming in from the Atlantic just can't make it over because the air is cooling, and that just saturates the air out. Once it reaches the apex of the mountains, coming down the mountains really just dries us out, and we don't see a whole lot of moisture kind of enter into the area. So that's what we're seeing right now. Again, we're seeing very, very dry air over much of the region. Now let's take a look at what's going to happen as we head into the day tomorrow. I want you to notice our jet stream. This is our high pressure right over here. I'm going to highlight this for you right here. Our high is kind of centered right into this bullseye of clockwise flow in here, a little bit just off to the north of it, kind of right in here. That high is going to move away. The forcing for that high is not going to be there anymore. And we have this area of low pressure driven by this disturbance right here. You can see that little wiggle in the jet stream right there. Also some very stronger winds. And this low pressure is going to move on in, kind of kick the high further away, further to the south and west. So the high that was originally here is going to move its way further to the south and west down here. What this will do is switch flow from southeasterly to southwesterly. Lots of moisture to tap into down in the southwest because of the Gulf right in here. The Gulf is a really strong source of moisture for us. So that's what we're going to be seeing over the next few days. And as we look at those surface features, we can really point that out. There's that high moving away. Notice as we see these color changes from the lighter greens here back at the beginning to the yellows to the oranges. That's all that humidity from the Gulf moving its way up into our area, moving forward here. Now, eventually, the cold front back here is going to interact with that humidity, and we'll talk about that in a little bit in just a second. But the big thing we're going to notice, too, is notice how tomorrow we're raising those dew points from the 60s into the 70s, even into the mid-70s for some cases. It's going to feel a little bit more oppressive out there. Still not excessively hot. We are going to be into the lower and middle 90s, and thunderstorms are going to mitigate the heat just a bit thanks to that humidity. But yes, it is going to be a little bit on the more muggy side of things for your day tomorrow. Let's spotlight some local events. We've got the Boyd County Fair going on, and meteorologist Dylan Godet has a look at what we can expect around the area, plus the Boyd County Fair.
Hey everyone, meteorologist Dylan Godet here with a look at your Tuesday zone-by-zone forecast. We are going to see another hot and humid day with some pop-up showers and storms developing mainly into the late afternoon, early evening. Southeastern Ohio, until any rain moves in, it's going to be hot and humid. We've got low 90s for those locations. Looking at eastern Kentucky, upper 80s across southeastern parts of the region. That's better chance of seeing those rain and storms. One area that we're going to be watching very closely for any storm chance would be for the Boyd County Fair taking place there tomorrow afternoon. Hot and humid, pop-up showers and storms do increase in likelihood later into the afternoon that you go. So just keep that in mind if you are heading out to the Boyd County Fair. For the southern West Virginia coal fields, upper 80s, low 90s for you as well with some pop-up showers and storms. I think a little bit of a lower chance of seeing those storms from Charleston northward, but still some pop-ups will be possible. We've got low to mid 90s once again. Better chance of rain on Wednesday. Of course, stay with the First Alert Weather Team for more updates.
Yeah, Dylan mentioned, again, the increase in humidity creating that storm chance. But for a lot of us, we should be dry. It's very hit-or-miss activity that will be moving on in tomorrow. I don't think the Boyd County Fair should be impacted too much. If they are a brief 10-minute downpour, that's going to be about it. So good news for those of you fairgoers in Boyd County, Kentucky here. Let's go back to our water vapor satellite. I want to highlight for you just exactly why we're seeing that increase in humidity. First, we'll move our map a little bit further to the north and west. And again, that high pressure is going to move to the south and west, but what's also going to kick in is a low pressure from this disturbance right in here. This disturbance is going to be the key, especially all this moisture that is tapping into down here in the far central and southern plains right here. That is what's going to be headed our way tomorrow. Now, the good news is the forcing is not going to be too much. We're not going to see a whole lot of that. That means we're not going to see widespread activity, but the chance of a thunderstorm will be there for your day tomorrow. And with a little wiggle in the jet stream kind of moving its way on through, definitely going to be a possibility. The bigger, more widespread forcing will come on Wednesday in the form of this cold front right in here. That is what's going to drive all that humidity, lift it up to produce more of that thunderstorm and precipitation activity, and maybe cause us some downpours, some lightning and thunder during the middle part of our day on Wednesday. Definitely going to have to watch that. Let's move this forward. Again, here's this little disturbance coming through Tuesday afternoon and evening. That is what's going to drive maybe a little bit of activity over our region during your evening time frame on Tuesday. Pushing this forward, though, notice the bigger disturbance, the wiggle in the jet stream that you'll see right in here, pushing its way on through on Wednesday. It's going to lift all that humidity up. Why we're seeing that, you're seeing the faster winds high up in the sky. Again, right in here. The purple indicates faster winds. you get diverging air. When air diverges aloft, air has to fill the void at the bottom, comes into the bottom, rises to fill that void here. And that's what we're getting right in here. We're getting that wind slowly becoming faster and turning to the left. Meanwhile, we have air over here turning to the right. That diverging air is going to rise that air up, cause us some rain and storm problems as we head into Wednesday. Good news is the winds high up in the sky, notice how weak they are in comparison to areas further north. Because of that, again, the stronger winds being up here and up here, we're going to have lower chances at seeing organization to these storms. I don't think we're going to see any sort of severe weather with this, so there's some good news for you on that. Because those winds are just going to be so weak high up in the sky. Let's take a closer look at this, time this out for you hour by hour. We're tracking it through 5 p.m. tomorrow. And again, an isolated sprinkle, like I said earlier, could be a possibility. I think your better bet toward the middle of the day is going to be up in the northern and eastern part of the area. We have a little disturbance trying to come on through there. But then we're watching down here, down toward London, Kentucky, down toward Lexington, Jackson, Kentucky, for a northeastward push of some showers and storms during your evening time frame of your Tuesday. Good news is the sun will go down, kind of limit that energy, so it's a really hit or miss stuff tomorrow. Not going to be a huge deal. Here's the cold front, though, coming through. You can actually point this out based on where the winds are shifting on our futurecast and where our precipitation is showing up here on our futurecast. Noon Wednesday. Again, a lot of those kids are already going to be in school. You're already going to be at work. Everyone's going to be inside. This is why no First Alert Weather Day is going to be in place. It's coming at a time where it's not going to impact a lot of people. On top of that, no severe weather is really expected with this event. So the good news is for Wednesday, it's a low-impact event. And it's still going to be hit or miss, scattered. It is going to be the potential of seeing some widespread activity, but it's not going to be an event where we're going to be seeing a total washout of a day. Again, it's toward that middle part of the day where we're really concerned about seeing a downpour, hearing some thunder, and seeing some lightning over here. So not a huge deal. And as far as precipitation accumulation goes, over the next 3 days, really not concerned about any sort of flash flooding. We could see some spots where we could see up to 2 inches of rain, but the moisture, again, thanks to that downsloping that Hannah was talking about, just not there to produce any sort of flash flooding. In spite of the winds being very slow and keeping these storms from really moving too fast, our moisture in our air is just going to be pretty low. However, there is a lot of moisture and humidity over in the tropics, and Chief Meteorologist Tony Cavalier, he has a look at what we're seeing and what we've seen so far this tropical season.
Well, if you've ever visited the Myrtle Beach Grand Strand or had friends who've gone there year after year, occasionally you've come to know the palm trees like to sway when gale force winds are coming in off the Atlantic Ocean. Basically, the mariners have flags they raise over at the Grand Strand or any beach. When you have a red flag with one black box, that's a storm flag. Tropical storm winds of 39 miles per hour or higher. And then when the hurricane flags are raised, it's 2 red flags with 2 black boxes inside. And that's when we expect winds of 74 miles per hour or higher. I mention that because it is prime time for hurricane season from now into the month of October. And the bottom line is eventually we're going to be tracking some tropical storms and hurricanes of note. I want to take you back to the 1800s when mariners and merchants were coming from the old world in Europe over to the new world. That would be, of course, the Americas. And the savvy British Caribbean sailors came up with a motto because they learned how navigating the ocean can be perilous during the summer season when hurricanes and tropical storms are common. Their ancient mariner saying is, it's a kind of a poem or a limerick, June too soon for hurricanes and tropical storms. July stand by, and August be on your guard, for a September you will remember for tropical storms and hurricanes, because by October it's all over. Now we'll add this on a planet that's warmed over the course of the last couple of centuries. Basically, hurricane season goes through November now. But the bottom line is we are moving into the heart of hurricane season, so we have a depth eye looking at the oceans of the world. In our case, we look at the Caribbean, the Gulf, and of course the Atlantic Ocean. Did you know there's been a tropical storm at sea all of last week, And I'm taping on Friday evening, so there's this swirl over the North Atlantic that was formerly Tropical Storm Dexter. As this storm is skyrocketing toward the British Isles, and it's doing so Friday night at breakneck speed, it has a lot of ocean waves and a lot of wind, but it's lost its so-called tropical characteristics. It's over cooler water, and oftentimes storms make a transition when they get away from the warmth of the oceans to the cool of the North Atlantic. As far as the weekend's concerned, heading into the early part of the new week, there's been a disturbed area from the Bahamas, off Florida, and the Carolinas that was watched by the National Hurricane Center. But overall, this showed a lack of disorganization as I tape on Friday evening. Now I want to take you across the West Indies, defined as Cuba, Hispaniola, and Puerto Rico, and go all the way east to the African continent. There are hundreds of thousands of millions of square miles where the air is too dry. There's just sunshine. There's virtually no clouds taping on Friday evening. But on the underbelly of that, coming from equatorial regions, there is a so-called area of convergence. We call it the ITCZ, the Intertropical Convergence Zone. Fancy way of saying the closer you get to the equator, the better chance that waves coming off of the African continent can survive as clusters of showers and thunderstorms as they move across the open waters of the Atlantic and eventually head toward the Americas, whether it be South America or Central America more prominently, and of course North America. So we're watching this breeding ground for storms over the next 2 months. National Hurricane Center will be keeping a close eye on any storm that forms to gain tropical storm characteristics, 39 miles per hour or higher, or maybe get to hurricane status, 74 miles per hour or higher. And of course, if a storm was to grow especially fierce, it could raise to a Category 5 hurricane, which would mean winds in excess of 155 miles an hour. Did you know that already 4 tropical storms have been christened heading into the middle of the month of August? Andrea. Barry's the storm that went in rather innocently into Mexico, and then the swirl wound up in central Texas, stalled, and produced the devastating flooding that we've been watching with Tom Lamas and Nightly News over the past month. Hot on the heels of Barry, Tropical Storm Chantal literally went on shore at Georgetown in the Grand Strand area. So rains and gusty winds were common as Chantal moved on shore in the coastal Carolinas. Once the storm got inland, it weakened to a depression, but it poured down enough rain to cause havoc in parts of North Carolina and Virginia, including around the Research Triangle. And as we saw earlier, Tropical Storm Dexter is at sea. As a non-tropical entity, it's a fancy way of saying it's heading toward the British Isles without a name, but certainly it has some meaning as far as wind and rain is concerned. Looking down the road, Aaron, Fernand, Gabrielle, Umberto gives a little Latin connotation to the tropical storm season. Imelda, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, and Nestor, and then we get a little Eastern European flair with Olga, Pablo, Rebecca spelled with a K, Sebastian, Tanya, Van, and Wendy. These are the tropical storms and hurricanes that are possible as we get into the heart of the season. I think we're unlikely to get to the V and the W. Perhaps we get as far as the O or P storm this year. But the bottom line is any of these names could go from a tropical storm week to a full-fledged hurricane. And we'll keep you posted from the Weather Center, as no doubt there will be tropical storms and hurricanes to deal with. Maybe not directly here as far as rains are concerned, but when a tropical storm or hurricane misses us, for example, over toward Myrtle Beach or out over the Atlantic Ocean just offshore of the United States southeast coast, oftentimes it makes our weather hotter and drier. And that could very well happen as we get to a week or two from now if a tropical storm or hurricane gets close enough to the U.S. but doesn't bring rains and winds our way. Instead, indirectly affects us with heat and dryness. That's my very latest on the hurricane season ahead.
All right, thank you, Tony. And yeah, you talked about Dexter and that forming little wave off of Africa. We have new information. Let's get right into it. So first and foremost, let's talk about Dexter. This is what's left of Dexter up here. It's really disorganized, not really a thing that we have to worry about over much of the North Atlantic. The waters are too cold. There's too many winds up there. We're good to go with Dexter. That is well off to sea. Meanwhile, Tropical Storm Aaron has indeed formed right down here. Let's zoom on into that system right there. It is a tropical storm now. As of 5 p.m., it is moving west at 21 miles an hour, winds of 45 miles an hour, so it's just a brand new tropical storm. Gusts up to 60, though. A 1004 pressure. So a 1004 pressure means it's not too strong of a low. However, it's going into a favorable environment here, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Name of the game here, what we need to know, though, for this storm is that it's going to gain strength. It's still a tropical storm tomorrow, 3 p.m., but as it continues to work its way further and further to the east, this is the official National Hurricane Center forecast, further and further to the west. My apologies there. By Saturday, it's in the Caribbean as a Category 3 hurricane, according to the National Hurricane Center. What it does after this remains to be seen. There is a possibility we could see some effects here on the East Coast, anywhere from Myrtle Beach down here to the panhandle of Florida, rather the east coast of Florida. We'll have to see how strong a ridging of high pressure is going to be, that dry air that Tony was mentioning over the central Atlantic, as to where exactly this storm is going to track, or if it just curves right back out to sea over here. There's a lot riding on this, and of course we'll know a lot more in the coming days. But those of us on the east coast of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, the Outer Banks, you could see at least minimal effects from this storm as it works further and further on to the west here out of Africa. Those sea surface temperatures are very favorable. Like I mentioned earlier, they're in the 80s right now. Right now, that storm is in an environment where those sea surface temperatures are only into the 70s, it appears, out here toward Africa. Let's zoom on out here, give you an idea. It's out here, right into, let's say, the west coast of Africa, right in here. And again, it's likely to ride up this general direction. It's going into an environment with, again, sea surface temperatures in the 80s. That's very favorable for storms, especially these mid-80s you're getting here over toward Bermuda, over toward the Miami coast, places like that. But again, it all depends on the steering winds high up in the sky. And that's what we're going to have to look at right in here. Let's pause this around Saturday, because this is when the really storm is expected to kind of decide what it wants to do as far as impacts to the United States right here. Here is what we're talking about. Big old ridge of high pressure right in here. The European model keeps this ridge of high pressure in place. What this would do, the winds would steer this further and further away from sea, kind of in the direction of more central portions of the Atlantic right here. There's not a whole lot of wind outside the hurricane. This is the actual hurricane itself right in here. And I'll circle that for you right here. The bullseye of really those strong winds, bear with me as I get my pen here, bullseye of strong winds right here is the hurricane itself. And so what this is doing, if this ridge holds together, again, winds are moving in this general direction. I'll get my jet stream here for you to show you. Winds are moving in this general direction here. On the other side, we're seeing winds moving in this general direction. We'd kind of see this clockwise spin drive this up and away from the eastern coast of the United States. If this high pressure kind of holds together, that would also push it a little bit away as well. We'll have to see how that evolves. The thing is, though, again, it's a favorable environment out to sea. We'll see what it does, if it impacts Bermuda, if it impacts the east coast of the United States. It does remain to be seen. But again, we're giving you that first alert. For those of us in Myrtle Beach, all the way down the east coast of Florida, you could see at least maybe some rip current threats from this storm as it tracks further and further to the east, going into that favorable environment. This is all the way out to Saturday. We'll see as it goes into next week what exactly is going to really happen as it moves further and further to the west, interacts with this feature. This is the European model. Again, it takes it a little bit further off course here. You see just minimal wind from this along the east coast of the United States, but you could see some rip current issues if this comes true. That's the actual hurricane itself right in here, tracking further away, going around this big ridge of high pressure out here. That's the way the steering winds are working. Again, that's one model solution. Could be a little different on what the American model is saying. The American model may have it a little bit further west. As of the latest runs, we have had runs in the past where it moves it kind of further in, a little bit further to the west. We're not ready to say that the East Coast is definitely going to take a hit from this. We do know that there could be at least, again, rip current threats, maybe a little bit of higher waves from this. And again, we'll keep you updated as that situation evolves here. All right, long-term forecast pattern. We're still in that pattern where all that colder air up in the poles is really holding tough. We're still seeing that positive Arctic oscillation, hence why we're still seeing hotter than normal temperatures overhead. That little dip in the jet stream coming through on Wednesday may cool us off for a little bit, but you'll notice the reinforcing shot of cold air that's pushing into Alaska right up in here. We see Greenland seeing a lot of colder air as well, and we will continue to see just above average temperatures because of this. In fact, once we head into the weekend, it is really looking like we're going to see a lot of developments of just really, really hot conditions for the weekend. On top of that, humidity. So really not the best in terms of heat and feels like temperatures this weekend. We're not really looking forward to that. I know a lot of kids, it's their first really official weekend of the school year, and it's certainly not going to feel like the school year. Hopefully you can find a splash pad, get to a pool if they're still open at that point, to really cool yourself off for the weekend. But that hot temperature weather looks to really last. The next cool down really doesn't look to get here until the end of next week, but that does look like we could see some relief thanks to a retreat of that cooler air back into portions of the North Atlantic here. So again, let's talk about it. I want to show you there's that cool down by next Thursday, and that's due to the breakup of the polar vortex. Notice how the cooler air up here goes down into portions of Russia, into portions of Siberia. Meanwhile, we get a breakup of the Arctic oscillation over here, and we get some warmer than normal temperatures up in the poles. If this is to be the case, again, we'll see that cool down work its way on in, and that'll be very beneficial to us, as we head into the end of next week. Now, the Climate Prediction Center keeps us above normal, unfortunately. This is days 6 through 10, so that would be Sunday through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. And Thursday and Friday is when the European model wants to cool us down just a little bit. So we'll have to see. Meanwhile, we're still above normal in terms of that precipitation category here. So we are watching for warmer and slightly wetter than normal conditions overhead. Super 7-day forecast time. That means we're getting toward the end of the show here. Wednesday, again, better chances of rain will be coming toward the middle portion of the day. There also could be a slight chance of shower activity very early hours of the morning before you're leaving for work or school. But that noon to 2 p.m. time frame, I do think is going to be the best chance of seeing some rain. Meanwhile, on Saturday, that humidity getting up there, the European model's still not quite ready to call a danger threshold for Saturday. Hence, we've not issued a first alert weather day, but some of our guidance is suggesting we could get up there. We're going to keep a very close eye on that Saturday time frame and the Sunday time frame for that matter for the potential of first alert weather days because, yes, it will get on the toastier side, and with increased humidity for the weekend, that is not going to feel all that great. Those feels like temperatures could get into that danger threshold, and especially with the kids at school, with the pools closed, it's going to be a lower threshold for first alert weather days. So we're keeping a close eye Saturday into Sunday. Those look to be the two hottest days. Meanwhile, a weak cold front could be a possibility at least as we head into Monday. This is First Alert Weather Plus. We give you the first alert on anything that's headed your way. We go in-depth to the weather as well every Monday, 6:30 p.m., streaming live on all the digital platforms on WSAZ. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel, exclusive to First Alert Weather Plus. We're going to start producing some original content for you in the coming weeks as well. Maybe give you some science experiments to do at home with your kids, or if the kids want to learn more about the weather, we'll have it all on that YouTube channel. And, of course, if you're watching on WSAZ.com, be sure to check out all of our other stories going on. Sports Plus, of course, tomorrow, airing at 6:30 p.m. every Tuesday, and First Alert Weather Plus at 6:30 p.m. every Monday. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Snider on Facebook. Dylan G'day Weather on Facebook for meteorologist Dylan G'day. It's meteorologist Hannah Hayes on Facebook for meteorologist Hannah Hayes. And Chief Meteorologist Tony Cavalier would be Tony Cavalier to show you on Facebook. I'm meteorologist Nicholas Snider. In the meantime, make it a great Monday, everybody.